Good morning again. Thank you for staying and joining us this morning. Our next presenter is with Circular Materials, as you can see on the screen. And we're fortunate this morning to have Usman, who has spent a great deal of time on the Blue Box file, working for different producers over the years. And I have a great deal of respect for Usman and the team that they've started to assemble at Circular Materials. And I'm glad that they're able to, that he and Shane, Usman and Shane are with us this morning. So I understand, Shane, you're going to start first.
Well, I think, thanks very much for that intro, Mac. Really appreciate it. I think we should just start with a bit of an introduction from both Usman and I. So my name's Shane Buckingham. I've worked on producer responsibility issues pretty much over the last decade in various roles, but I'm on the project team for Circular Materials and have been responsible for the
British Columbia, the one that Craig was talking about, that's operating currently as Recycle BC. And I'm fortunate to be once again working with Glenda Geese, who is on this project team as well, and Chris Van Rossum is also on this team. I'm also working in Alberta for the Alberta government to help design the EPR regulation for Blue Box there. So I not only do work for the private sector, but I've done a lot of work for the public sector, both at the, federal, municipal, and provincial. So yeah, this is a super exciting opportunity. I'm super grateful to be able to work on this. I know all of us collectively, whether municipalities, producers, private sector, circular economy, service sector, as I call companies like GFL, have all been waiting for this to come. And I think we collectively have a tremendous opportunity to build the best extended producer responsibility reverse supply chain for packaging materials in the world. And I think that's really our objective from now until this thing goes live and then reaches some kind of steady state in 2026, where we really start to then drive the more refined technical aspects of managing materials to a higher standard, which I'm going to talk about. So with that sort of introduction to the team, I'm going to turn it over to Shane to just set up the whole discussion that we're looking forward to having with you today.
Thanks for that. So one of the key things that we've been making sure that producers understand is they have time. One of the key issues that comes up in every discussion, we've heard that some producers may have been getting some pressure to sign up earlier than October 1st, but they have a regulatory responsibility to sign up on October 1st with RIPRA. And we, as Circular Materials, want to make sure that we can continue to sign up producers as we head into the rule creation process that will occur in the fall. So that could happen as soon as November 2nd, because up until November 1st, pros can be registering as rule creators. But once November 1st hits, if you haven't signed up as a rule creator by that point, you can no longer sign representation agreements.
Shane, if I could just jump in there a little bit on that particular slide. I think there's a couple of terms that are getting thrown around that I think are worth unpacking here a little bit. You've heard the term rule creator and allocation table and things of that nature. What has to happen under the regulation is that the province needs to have a seamless collection system, and that means single family, multifamily, depots, facilities, and First Nation communities. So that system is going to be shared across multiple pro. And so the way the rules operate will determine how that collection system is established and how it actually collects materials, and how the various pros are allocated their responsibility within that system. And that can happen in a number of different ways. You can split the province up in geographies, and various pros take different geographies, and then they figure out how to share the different costs across the province. Or you can have one system that all the pros operate together, and once the material is collected, they pull that material out of that common collection system and process it. So these timelines in between these dates that Shane has here, there's a tremendous amount of planning that needs to go on about how the pros are going to get together and have this discussion about what the post-collection system is going to look like, meaning once the material is collected, what does that supply chain going to look like? How is it going to be procured? And those are sorts of things that our team is working with our producers to prepare for. And that includes things like having a good understanding of how much material you have, what types of material you have, what types of collection you're going to need. So in this regulation, for example, there is a requirement not just to collect packaging as packaging, but there's a separate set of targets for beverage containers. That's going to require a different approach to collect and manage those materials. And so there's a tremendous amount of planning that's going on right now, not just to establish the pro, but also to look forward as to how we're going to engage in these various activities, including discussions with other pros on how to set up a system that operates seamlessly. And a little bit later on, I'm going to talk about what that means for municipal assets and what consideration those assets will get. Sorry for that, Shane, if you want to carry on.
That's good. Just to go over the regulatory timeline. So circular materials, as you probably saw in the news last week, we launched last week. There was a news release. There were a couple of different articles. There's a Canadian Press article talking about the vision for circular materials. So there's the website, which we can provide in this presentation as well. And circular materials was incorporated in July as a national not-for-profit organization to help producers meet their obligations under extended producer responsibility regulations in Canada. Of course, our focus is in Ontario, and Circular Materials is operating under the name of Circular Materials Ontario in the province, with a focus on end-to-end compliance for producers. Every aspect of the regulation, those services will be delivered by Circular Materials. And there's a real vision from the founders to make sure that we have a focus on a voice for producers in the representation for rule creation, that we have meaningful producer governance and engagement, and that we build a system of competitive procurement that gets the best quality at the best value for producers. So we have 15 food, beverage, and consumer products manufacturers, retailers, and restaurants that came together to found this organization. As you'll see, we've got 2 restaurants, 4 retailers, 9 brand owners. We have a really balanced representation of interest coming from across the producer community, and everything that we're working on right now. So, Usman, Glenda, and I are part of the project team. We develop recommendations, but we are going to the producers that are part of our founding group, and they are driving this process. This is a producer-led, driven initiative, and that has been the vision right all the way back to the Waste Reduction Act, over the last 10 years, is to make sure that producers are in the driver's seat, that producers are able to shape the coming system so that it achieves the efficiency that has been envisioned by the province.
And if I could just jump in there, I think the nature of this regulation, where producers are responsible, unlike under the Waste Diversion Act, where you had stewardship agencies like Stewardship Ontario that were responsible, you have a tremendous amount of engagement by the companies directly. So when you're talking to Circular Materials Ontario, you're talking to the individual producers that are part of it. And I think one of the most interesting things I've seen as EPR is developed in Ontario, if you go, BC was kind of the pilot jurisdiction, and BC is certainly not perfect. There's lots of things that were done in BC that we wouldn't do in Ontario because there were learning experiences. But when we're here, producers have learned from BC, and with the obligations that they have here, they're incredibly engaged with the nitty-gritty policy details, including things like how municipalities are going to transition, the relationship with municipalities, how that might evolve, how you might leverage existing activities that municipalities are engaged in and minimize disruption. So, you know, we've got a very engaged producer community that is soaking this stuff up like a sponge, and it's really gratifying to see this level of engagement.
So, and oops, I'm not sure how that happened. So with our group too, there's obviously a huge focus on meeting the sustainability commitments that these companies have made. One of the things, you know, even back to the Waste Reduction Act, Waste Free Ontario Act, at that time, people had to focus on product stewardship compliance. Really, you know, go sign up with Stewardship Ontario, tick the box, and you're done. This is a completely new vision for producers. That's why the name Circular Materials was chosen, because this is building a recycling supply chain to make sure that producers are having the influence over how their materials are collected, processed, and reincorporated into their packaging and products. We want a truly circular system in Ontario, and that's the vision, and that's why the founders chose this name, to signify that this is a much more progressive brand. It's not just something that's being built to replicate what we have had in the past. Now, part of that building of the recycling supply chain, of course, includes other parties like waste management companies and municipalities as we move forward with this transition. So I'll turn it over to Usman to kind of speak a bit more about that municipal and supply chain perspective. You're on mute.
Yeah, if you could just maybe just jump to the next slide, Shane, that'd be great. So, you know, I'm just going to run through the core services and unpack some of these things, and then talk a little bit about, you know, the what is this slide, and then kind of the next slide is the how. So strong representation for producers in the development of a blue box collection system and rules for its operation. And this alludes to what I talked about earlier, which is, you know, having a collection system in Ontario, irrespective of how many producer responsibility organizations there are. You know, we're the first registered with the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority. We expect there'll be others. You know, Craig's talked about GFL's aspirations in this area. So irrespective of how many they are, what do the rules look like, and how does that work to create a seamless collection system in the province that overcomes some of what we've experienced in Ontario with municipalities having to basically be responsible for their geographic area. We want to leverage all of that great municipal activity, but sort of create scale on it with a common set of rules, a common set of materials, common set of protocols for tackling contamination. All of those sorts of things are going to be critical to improve the blue box in Ontario. Producer governance is important, and I talked about producer engagement. There's a whole other process going on right now called the Canada Plastics Pact, and a number of the producers that are involved in Circular Materials Ontario are involved in the Plastics Pact. And what's happening there is there's a process called the Golden Design Rules, which is really changing the design of packaging to make it more recyclable and to eliminate hard to recycle materials. And so the producers that are engaged over there are engaged in this pro. And so as they go to evaluate advanced recycling technologies through the Canada Plastic Pact and figure out how those might be deployed, they're now also governing their own pro and making decisions about what kinds of things they want to procure from the market and how to go procure that to get the best system possible. data is incredibly important, and it's important for regulatory reporting, for creating transparency around the system, for measuring performance and improving performance. So there's a huge element of data collection in it. And the pro that we're establishing is going to have a comprehensive information technology system behind it. We are with the purchase of CSSA by GFL, it's actually opened up opportunities for looking at other vendors globally, and it's remarkable the level of sophistication that some players that are operating in Europe have, and who are entering the North American market that we've been able to engage with. So pretty exciting stuff happening in terms of performance measurement and reporting. Commitment to achieve management targets. Well, I mean, this should go without saying. The management targets in Ontario are very interesting. So in British Columbia, the province has set out collection targets with management requirements, but no management target. And what management means is a recycling target. So in Ontario, if you collect a ton of material, that's not your management target. It's what comes out the back end of the MRF is what's considered to have been managed. So if the targets in Ontario are effectively much higher because it is post residue that gets measured. And so what needs to happen in terms of the entire supply chain, from collecting from a residence or a depot and moving it through the system, all has to be about maximizing the yield of material, reducing contamination, bringing the best technologies to bear to sort materials and process materials. We believe, and this is not a philosophical view, but a practical view, that innovation comes through competitive procurement. And competitive procurement means getting the best of what the market has to offer. So you heard a lot of things that GFL is doing, which are great. Miller's doing those things, waste management, and even beyond that. So if we move into plastics, we have advanced recycling technologies, we have better optical sorting, we have mechanical recycling that is improving in its ability if you properly sort materials. We want to procure all of that. And another thing that's happening in the Canada Plastics Pact is we're assessing these technologies and being able to find out who's who in the zoo so we can go procure that. A system of fair cost allocation amongst participating producers. You can imagine that if I'm in a high cost material and Shane is in a lower cost material, we're going to have a discussion about how system costs are allocated so the right signals go back to reward the right kind of behavior in terms of what you're putting into the system. Support for producers in meeting recycled content commitments. This is now no longer, as Shane pointed out, simply about regulatory compliance. We know that it's coming with recycled content standards for plastics. Producers are going to need those materials to be directly sent back to their packaging reformers. And that recycled content may be in the form of mechanically recycled plastics, or it may be in the form of methanol, which then from an advanced recycling system, which then goes to make polyethylene, which then goes back into packaging. So producers are not just interested in what happens at the MRF, but well beyond it, because they are interested in getting their materials back. And that is a specific mandate we've been given in designing this pro. And none of this works without clear and compelling consumer promotion and education. And that's where the pro needs to engage with municipal partners and use existing municipal channels for communication, working with the municipality, and obviously funding all of that promotion and education to make sure it's maximally effective. Shane, if you could just zip to the next slide. So I think we've sort of talked about the first bullet to extent, but collaboration with private circular system providers as a means to long-term stability and innovation. What we're hearing from some of the folks in the advanced recycling of plastics, let's say, as an example, is today we don't have a surety of supply of properly sorted material. And once we recycle this stuff, we have to compete with virgin resin, and we're not competitive with that. And recycled content standards are going to help with that, but so are long-term commercial agreements that are, yes, procured competitively, but also result in stable collaboration, where we can try things out, we can make mistakes, we can fix mistakes, we can, what we call learning by doing, which is, the evolution that all of you municipal operators have seen over the years. You try something, it doesn't work quite the way you expected, you make changes to it, and over time, the system evolves. We have to do that in a compressed timeline. And fortunately, we're starting in 2021, where there's a lot to learn from. A lot of the things, the problems that we know with collection and sorting and markets, we've learned what mistakes we've made, and we've figured out how to address them. But we've got this new opportunity, which is to take materials to a higher order use. And that's really where these long-term stable relationships are going to be necessary. And one of our mandates is, yes, procure competitively, but also have a long-term view to having stable relationships that will drive innovation and investment. Collaboration with municipalities, and this is one that I'm sure folks on this call are interested in. There is no point unduly disrupting what's going on the ground today if you can improve it. So if a municipality is collecting materials, blue box materials, but also collecting organics, and has a waste contract, and that's a bundled contract, and that contract doesn't expire over a long period, how do we manage that contract to avoid disrupting it? How do we layer in a broader list of materials? How do we work with both the municipality and the contractor to reduce contamination over time, and harness what's on the ground today? And that goes for physical assets as well, which is the system is going to be reformed. And when I say reformed in Ontario, I mean when it comes to post-collection management of material, that is the transfer, consolidation, sorting, and recycling, and downstream processing. That's going to happen on a much larger scale, because producers obviously don't have to stick to municipal boundaries. And so, they can scale up these operations and bring innovation to that. But many of the municipal facilities today are going to have a role in that new world, because if you are transferring materials, consolidating, pre-sorting, and potentially marketing things like fiber directly from your transfer facilities, now you're creating new efficiencies that weren't possible before. And the philosophical view that we're bringing, the practical view, is that all of those municipal facilities should have an opportunity to participate in the new system, and should be available for the procurement processes that producers are going to engage in to buy supply chains from service providers such as Miller and GFL and companies like that. So, this is an important feature, is that while we're redesigning and reconfiguring and scaling, we should try to redeploy everything that's on the ground today rather than recreating it from scratch. So I think, that's a very important concept. And certainly when I worked in BC, that was the approach that we took. And one of the things that we learned that we did right was, put out your tenders for post-collection, let the private sector respond to those tenders, and the private sector then will go out and engage with local companies and build these supply chains to scale things up. And I think you heard some of that from Craig today, is they're looking at that approach. And certainly, we expect that when we go to tender, that we're going to be getting responses from GFL with innovative ideas that they have to service the producers that are in our pro. Next slide. Yeah, so if there are any questions, well, Mac has my email address, so I'm always happy to hear from anyone that has any questions. But we have an email address here, info@circularmaterials.ca, and if there are any questions about what we're doing or any suggestions, we're super eager to hear them. And if you have municipal assets, that you have questions about, specific questions about, don't hesitate to reach out to us and have a discussion about what your hopes and aspirations are for those assets, because we want to hear that too. And we need to hear that as we go to work with the private sector providers to start building the specifications for tenders and procurement tools that we're going to use. So, a very important dialogue is going to happen based on those timelines that you saw earlier in the deck, about, hey, you guys should be thinking about buying this in this way, or we have a facility and, here it is, here's what it does. Keep it in mind when you go and look at this geography in Ontario for processing or transfer consolidation. So, the more we know, and certainly the more we understand, the better our procurement is going to be to buy the services that we need. So I'm just going to stop there and see if there are any questions. And Shane and I are happy to have a chat if that's what folks want to do.
Yes, so we just have a few questions. So either for yourself, Usman or Shane, you can jump in. One of them is in regards to contamination in landfills. The fact is that what is the carrot for the producers, whether they're of your pro or a different pro, to actually create packages that don't end up in the landfill? They actually are put in the blue box, they're sorted, they get to an end user, and they're indefinitely reused, so that there is a true circular economy. So we're just concerned about the producer's package ending up in the landfill, and therefore the responsibility of the cost for that is on the municipality. What's the carrot for the producers?
Well, I think that is the core question. That is, probably the best question you could ask about, because it really speaks to why on earth are we doing all of this? And it has to be about that, which is you have recycling targets, and those recycling targets, as I mentioned earlier, are real recycling targets. They're not just collection targets. So to hit, for example, the beverage target for 2030 is 80% of all beverages sold in Ontario. You have a flexible plastic target, a rigid plastic target, non-beverage plastic targets in rigid and flexible. To hit a 40% flexible recycling target, you have to collect today upwards of 70 to 80% given the contamination rate. And so the producers have a very strong incentive to set up collection systems that are effective, because they will not hit their regulatory targets. And the regulatory targets in Ontario do not apply to an organization like Stewardship Ontario of the old days, where the targets were not only were they loosey-goosey, but you couldn't enforce them against anybody. The targets in this environment apply to individual producers. So if you look at that slide that Shane put up with our members, each one of those members, that target applies individually to them, and they have to work collectively together to achieve those targets. And so, there's strong carrots, which is they can get their materials back and reincorporate them into packaging, but there's sticks as well, which is if they don't hit their targets, there's penalties associated with not doing that. And so, beyond just regulatory compliance, and I think speaking of carrots again, they want the materials back. Consumers have spoken, they want recycled content in their packaging. We've got a overall 12% recycling rate for packaging in Canada, according to the Canada Plastics Pact. That's abysmal, and producers recognize that something has to be done, that this is not a sustainable agenda that we have here. So there are built-in carrots and sticks in this regulation, and it's really going to come to roost on the ground where more materials are going to need to be collected to meet those recycling targets.
Okay, well, thank you. So we've just passed our time. Want to thank both yourself and Shane Usman for your presentation and joining us today, and excited to for your pro circular materials to be a part of Ontario's future. And we look forward to, as municipalities, building a relationship with you over the years. So thanks, you, Mac, for your presentation. There are a few other questions, so I will share them with you, and you may, or Dave Gordon may answer them. So we'll get to all of those. So Presently, we'll take the next 5 minute. We'll take a 5-minute health break, and so we'll be back at 11:26 with Dave Gordon from AMO, who will, for lack of a better phrase, clean up on the waste and blue box morning. Thanks very much.